Okay, so we're back after our brief interruption, and we're talking Saturn and Neptune, and we're just sort of going over the main themes, and Jodie's got some great keywords, so here's the next on our list.
So the next little phrase that came to me was the miser meeting the mystic. So the miser being Saturn, because Saturn has this bit of a crusty, has a little bit of a crusty reputation.
Yes.
And then the mystic being this Neptune, which Neptune reflects the mystical part of life, the spiritual part of life. So these two meeting each other and having to acknowledge each other, right?
Well, I think that's a good word, the acknowledgement. And, whenever I hear the word miser, I think of I don't know, Scrooge, this old guy counting all his pennies in his basement or something. And there's a manifestation that's sort of the Saturn. I guess it's perhaps one of the more negative or the unconscious manifestations of Saturn, where you're so focused on the material side of things that you have discounted or ignored the mystical. And that is one of the great sort of pieces here, is that those two come together, that the mystic has a message for the miser, but the miser also has a message for the mystic. So
it's it reminds me of like a Christmas Carol a little bit. Like Scrooge, he was very structured. He went from his office to his house. He didn't interact with everybody. And then this compassionate side, which Neptune tends to bring, right? Which is like meeting these ghosts, these spirits, which is hello Neptune.
Totally Neptune.
Influencing and offering Mr. Miser Scrooge a different perspective, a bit of a softening in the heart. So this is another potential there for Saturn and Neptune, which I really like.
Yeah, the softening in the heart.
The softening in the heart, the miser, right?
And that's you're right, it's totally Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
It is absolutely the Scrooge. And then you hit the nail on the head. I'm like, oh, that's the whole aspect. We can go home now. Just go read that story, guys. Yeah. Because you're right, that the message comes to the miser through the dreams, which is a Neptune theme. So we often say when you're having a Neptune transit or Neptune is showing up in your life, to pay attention to your dreams, or to pay attention to those little synchronicities and those little intuitive sort of messages that you get. And that's what happens in A Christmas Carol, is these dreams, it's sort of a little bit of a madness, which I think is a bit Neptune too. That idea that you can't really explain why you have that feeling or where that idea has come from, but you're galvanized by it. And so that presence of the mystic perhaps has a place or a role to play for you.
And it happens in threes in the actual book, right? Which is also reflective of how a transit works in a three, right?
Yes.
There's the first initial meeting, which happened in November, and then the second meeting, which happens in June, and then the third and final, which really brings it home for Scrooge, and he changes, right? Yeah. Which is happening in September of next year. So,
no, that's beautiful. Yeah, Jodie, you got some good stuff. This girl's got the shit. Because they do, and they say, like, in that's a lot of cool. Symbolism and magic, and even in religions, there's a lot of this idea about things happening in threes. They talk about the Holy Trinity, the God, the Father, the Spirit, or the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
And that is the standard template. Not every transit meets that criteria, but the vast majority do. And it's almost like when you think about how the psyche works, or how the human mind and the human spirit works, it does need a little bit of repetition to really get the message, or to really have time to respond to whatever emerges. And so that idea of this late November, early December 2015, which is where we are right now, this is about awakening to what's next, or dreaming the new dream. And then wanting to work with Saturn and Neptune, the mystic and the miser, over this next little while, to see how you can make parts of that dream real, or put your money where your mouth is, so to speak. And not just have it as a fairy tale, sort of one day I will, let Saturn kind of galvanize you to say the time can be now.
Well,
so
yeah.
get going.
It's putting the time to the timeless, right? Because
look at this, time to the timeless.
It's just there. Like,
it is, yeah. No, that's exactly
brilliant.
And that's what Saturn says. And I think, Saturn. I love Saturn, and so I think we should all, totally get on Saturn's train.
I'm on board with Saturn too.
Totally, you can make stuff happen with Saturn.
You can.
So,
and that's the next sort of phrase that came to me, in which we talked a bit about this: the dream meeting the body.
Oh yes,
right?
The embodying.
This embodiment, because Saturn, in I guess medical astrology, Saturn rules the skeleton, the structure. That's the very structure of our bodies, our foundation, right? And then the dream is this Neptunian quality of dreams, imagination, right? The ethereal. So it's actually embodying a dream that you have, right? You may have all these ideas or inspirations, and as we've been talking about, Saturn is actually putting it into the body, like embodying that and walking it. And that's the manifestation, right? That's happening here.
Yeah, the idea of living your truth. And I always come back to, with this concept, the idea of, making something manifest. You're making it real. And while you were just saying that, Jodie, the thing that came to me was this idea of, people say, like, when you ask your parents about something and they're like, oh, that was years before we had you, you were still a twinkle in your father's eye at that time. And essentially, that's kind of what happens here, is that before something is made manifest, it is an idea. It is a twinkle in somebody's eye.
Totally.
And then we go from that little twinkling or that idea, that germination of something. It goes through a process where it is made manifest. And the embodying or the dream meeting the body is so much about that, making it real. It really brings that earthy Saturn kind of quality. Get my hands on it, because now it exists. And I think the point that came to mind when we were prepping and sort of going over our notes is the idea that when the planets are linked to the houses in astrology via the Chaldean or the Chaldean order, we do have a connection between Saturn and the first house. And the first house in the horoscope represents your body. It is the house where your spirit is made manifest, where your soul, if you like, comes down, it germinates in your mother's tummy and then separates at that first breath at birth and becomes its own independent manifest thing. And so that idea of Saturn connected to the first house where you are made manifest, that's really the power of Saturn, is that I guess it can give life to things. That's an extension, I guess, of giving form to things. And what you're giving form to is the dream. It's the Neptune vision. And weirdly, I feel like we're sitting recording this in my new house, which is like a dream made real that sort of came out of nowhere. But it is. I'm like, maybe somebody's going to take it away. I don't know, but they haven't yet.
No.
So.
Don't worry, Kelly. You can come to with me.
But it is
my place much smaller, but that's okay.
That's okay. So the dream meeting the body.